Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian, and I honor your presence here today. I'm very delighted to have two guests today. We're bringing back Rick Kenyon from here in Thailand and Bob Belcher from an undisclosed location in Northwest Andorra. And I'm very happy to have you both here today. How you feeling, Rick?
Hey, marvelous, darling.
And Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing great, bud.
It's really great to have you both here. It's a real treat for me especially, and for our viewers as well. The topic that we're going to share about today is one that I touched on in a very early episode on Brother Owl's Garden. It's about forgiveness. And this never ceases to be a tremendously important and transformational area of spirituality. So we're here to share about it today. And Rick, I'll pass the talking stick to you to kick it off for us about forgiveness.
Okay. Well, after years of my own personal experience and teaching for 15 years and doing hundreds of aura readings, I came to the realization that forgiveness transmutes karma. Like Gandhi said, an eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind. So basically, forgiveness requires understanding. How many times have you heard of people, or people have forgiven you, and then you find out 2 weeks later they're stabbing you back in the back because they really didn't forgive you? I think true forgiveness only comes from understanding yourself and why you did what you did, and the other person, why they did what they did, and how you attracted them into your life and helped to create the situation. If you take responsibility, there's almost no need to forgive them because you're responsible for that creation together with them doing the dance. We all read each other all the time, whether that gets into our conscious mind or not. And then if our subconscious goals and desires and what we need to learn fit together, then we do a dance with them. And sometimes we can call that a negative dance because it doesn't feel too good. And sometimes positive, we call it a positive dance because it feels good. So each of those situations is an opportunity to take responsibility for our part in the creation. And if we do take that responsibility, then forgiveness is almost a given because there's no judgment. And when we do that, and we do go through that type of process, all of life becomes a healing. It gives us the opportunity to reflect or to see what the world is reflecting back to us that we need to change and heal in ourselves. So self-forgiveness and forgiveness as others is key.
I think, Rick, what you've offered there is right off the bat is profound and very precious. To sum up the bullet points of what you've covered is we have certain unresolved or unhealed issues that are at play within us. These reflect out into the world. They attract or even trigger experiences and encounters and situations that mirror back and reflect those things within us that need our attention, need our healing. And when you understand that, then there is an essence of self-responsibility for having set that frequency out, sent it out into the universe to be matched. And that kind of, there's situations where this would be more difficult than others, but it almost takes any other person off the hook, in that sense that you created that reflection. And when you have that understanding, the judgment falls away. It's kind of moot, and forgiveness becomes a passe point. It's I always quote Neil Donald Walsh with his quote that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. And yet there's this interplay between the forgiveness and the understanding that is almost inseparable. The process of true forgiveness, which in the Hawaiian language, by the way, forgiveness means to free oneself from. So forgiveness is about you, freeing yourself from the effects of some wounding event or something. When you have gone through that whole process of forgiving of self and forgiving of others, you reach understanding. And from understanding, you look back and realize there actually wasn't anything to forgive when you understand. And you bring to the table a pretty heavy issue for a lot of people. I struggle with this. How responsible am I for what happens in my life and also what happens to me? Yeah, that's a big issue for me to deal with sometimes, because it seems that sometimes we're not fully responsible for everything that happens. But as a general statement, what's your take on that, Rick?
Well, people like to be victims.
Mm.
Victims equal powerlessness. And when you take responsibility for what you create in your life, you take your power back also. The whole concept of being a victim is, I had nothing to do with it. I'm powerless. I'm a victim. Life just smacked me. So
that's a really great point, Rick. People do have a tendency, a proclivity for victimhood, and they genuinely believe it. They're not trying to fool themselves. I mean, at the time, due to whatever lack of awareness, self-awareness, we do tend to believe, I am a victim. You have done this to me. You are bad and I am hurt. And the inverse is, when you step back into full responsibility, you then reclaim your power of the reality you create in your experience of life.
Yep. Basically, yep, in a nutshell. I mean, you can go on a deep dive into all those things, like subconscious mind versus conscious mind. A house divided can't stand. So if
Right.
your subconscious believes one thing, your consciousness believes the other, guess who wins? Subconscious always
Conscious.
Yep.
always wins, and that represents our belief system. And if you're into Buddhism, the Buddhist mind stream, the predispositions you came into this life with, you recreate in this life. When you go to bed tonight, you wake up tomorrow with all that stuff evaporated, gone. No, you bring it with you to the next day. As above, so below. What you leave this life with, and you haven't dealt with, you bring to the next life. In the sense of it's a predisposition to remake the same decision about yourself, about life, in your next life.
Yeah, I think that it's we reinforce the pathways, of our brain, of our thoughts. We constantly carve deeper grooves of those patterns of behavior within us. And yes, I believe you're totally correct that we brought a whole lot of that with us into this incarnation, and that unless we unravel and untangle and resolve it and heal it here, we will carry it with us into the next. And speaking of the next, I pass the talking stick to Brother Bob. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing well.
What can you share with
Rick,
forgiveness?
I agree with everything that Rick said about forgiveness. I want to tell my own story about it though.
Okay.
And because and I'll start with a client who came to me for a Reiki session, and I was working with her. And of course, being a Reiki master, not being a doctor, I can't diagnose or any of that kind of stuff. That's one, it's illegal. And it's also just plain not the right thing to do. But I can ask questions. And so I could feel, I could sense what was going on with her. And so I asked her who she was angry with. Well, boy, this woman had a story. And within 2 years, I think her husband died, her brother died, her father. I mean, all these people died within a couple of years. And she was furious. And I said, "You're angry with them for dying? I mean, it's not like they died on purpose just to piss you off." But she simply couldn't let go of her anger. And so I told her, I said, "Well, I can use Reiki and resolve the symptoms, but only you can change the cause. And as long as you hold on to anger, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing anybody can do." And I think what's important to realize is that we're energy beings. We run on energy, and we have what we feed emotionally. That's an energy system. And my own experience was, I mean, I do live on the Big Island. I'm here. But what brought us to the Big Island was a series of events that were devastating for me, for us. I ended up losing my home, losing our home, our business. And we came over here and we're so broke we couldn't pay attention. I mean, it was a really, really difficult time. And you saw the place when we were living close to the bone, so to speak. And the guy that I sold the business to ended up ripping me off there. So I mean, I lost a lot of money, and I was a very cranky and upset guy. I was really, really upset about it. When these people would come into my head, my upset would come up. They'd pop in and all this anger stuff would come. And this went on for too long. And I came across a little article on forgiveness. And I went, what am I doing? I know this stuff. I've been working with this stuff for years. It's like I let go of half my knowledge just to wallow in my crap. It's like you were saying, Rick, oh boy, I get to be a victim. Well, hello, that's no fun. And so I started practicing forgiveness, what I call the hard way. It was like they'd pop into my mind, I'd grit my teeth and go, I forgive you. I mean, it wasn't easy. But the more that I said it, the reason I want to tell this story is that people say, oh, forgiveness. Okay, how do I do that? I'm still pissed off. How do I do that? You do it with the actual words. You just say, I forgive you. Just say it. Say it out loud. You may want to choke on it. You might want to throw up saying it. Say it anyway. Just keep doing it. And what happened was, and this process took a couple of years. This is not an instant thing. I mean, we're really devastated by what happened. And it impacted a lot of people, not just my wife and I. So I just kept saying over and over, I forgive you. And it got easier. It got easier. And it got genuine. It got real. And the forgiveness actually started to take root. Then, Rick, as you said, I had to forgive myself, because the truth is, I knew what was going on, and I went against my own awareness. I had to take responsibility for getting us in trouble, because I didn't listen to my own I didn't listen to my gut. And you gotta always listen to your gut. You just gotta. Can't listen to your head, because it's just going to tell you whatever. You gotta really listen internally. And that's the story that I had to tell on forgiveness. Now I can think of these people. I don't have a charge on it anymore.
Well, Bob, you've offered some very, Rick has sort of outlined some very, very important principles. And then you've
Right.
sort of demonstrated in practice what that can look like, at least for you in your experience.
Right.
And yeah, I really respect that you own it up front, that it wasn't easy, because there's a term called toxic positivity,
Yeah.
and this is the everything is amazing, everything. No, it's not. And true healing always, I'm sorry, it involves pain. It hurts, but pain is sometimes the best teacher, or you could say pain is the imbalance or the weakness, etc., leaving us. And what you've offered reminds me that forgiveness is self-care. Forgiveness is self-care. Do you love yourself? Are you loving yourself? Are you serving as your own agent of wellness for yourself? Yes, then forgive, because as the Hawaiian language says, forgiveness is freeing yourself from. And
Right.
the other thing is that it's not pardon. In the prayer of Saint Francis, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. As much as I love that prayer and that song and that saint, that's the wrong word. Somebody mistranslated the word. It's not pardon. Pardon means this misdeed you have done is now all okay. We're not talking about that. We're talking about I free myself from the effects and affliction of what it is that you did. So it's about me for releasing myself from. It's not about
It-
that crappy thing you did is now totally okay.
No, no, it has nothing to do with the okay.
Yeah.
The thing that I realized was when I first came across that article on forgiveness was that when I got upset with the actions of these people, with what happened,
Mhm.
I'm actually giving them control over my life for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is, because all that crazy stuff is going on in my head. Well, I've said, and I've said it to you many times, the easiest thing and the most difficult thing to do is control our own mind. And it's sometimes you just grab a hold of that mind and go, hey, whoa, stop this. And whatever mantra, whatever thing you got to do that to let go of that stuff, because it's not doing you any good.
Right.
And the other thing too, Rick, you really hit a point, because karmically, holding on to that, it just takes you in. You don't let go of stuff. Somebody was talking about suicide a while back. And I said, if you're thinking about suicide for emotional reasons, guess what? You take that with you, because that's part of who you are, and you're going to have to deal with it sometime later. You're not going to be able to let go of that, because that's part of why you're here. There's some lesson in there you got to deal with. And so, work it out. You end up knocking off the body. You just kill the tool that you need to resolve the problem. So that's not going to help you.
Yeah, that's a
But
good point, bud. We're here in the Earth School now. This is the
exactly.
school and the triage, the hospital of the soul. And yes, it can be rough. And we're here to tell you that we know it can be rough, and that it often is rough, even though that doesn't
So
sell well on social media and in your circle of friends. But yeah, don't off the earth suit that you've got here, that you came here to resolve these issues with.
no,
Well, separation causes pain, and pain leads you home.
Say that again
And
for us a little louder, Rick, so make sure we hear it.
separation causes pain,
right.
but pain leads you home. It takes you
Beautiful.
back.
Yeah, one of the things, it's something that my wife would do. I would do some kind of bonehead thing, and she'd say, "What do you learn?" And I just get, I'm all upset about whatever it is that I'm upset about. And then one day I told her, I said, I'm starting to ask myself what I've learned. What did I learn from that experience? And she said something just beautiful. She said, you know, Bob, if I didn't learn from my experiences, all my pain would be for nothing. Well, what a brilliant thing to say. I mean, it's sheer brilliance, because if we're not learning, if this is indeed an earth school, and I believe that it is, we've talked about it, then these are lessons. If you're not learning, guess what? You got to repeat the lesson.
Yeah.
Well, and as Valerie pointed out, you know, the universe starts with a feather, and if you don't get that, it's a rock, then a brick, then it's a freight train. So learn with the feather. It's easier. It's a lot less painful.
And Rick, you mentioned a point that I'd like to ask, if possible, if you could elaborate more. Your point that you said, forgiveness transmutes karma. That sounds huge. Can you explain a little bit more about that, Rick?
You have all this, everyone agreeing, basically. You have all the different religions that are worth their salt, and you've got science all saying the same thing: cause and effect. You reap what you sow. Karma and dharma. Everybody calls it karma, but karma is the cause, dharma is the effect. So what is karma is created, or the cause and the effect are created by something that happens to you. Throwing a ball, it bounces. It's the effect. So if you change the causation through inner processes, it changes the effect.
And so how does
forgiveness,
forgiveness
like Gandhi
directly
says,
apply to
an eye
that?
for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth only makes the whole world blind. So forgiveness of yourself and others transmutes the karma. It changes the effect that's going to happen. Like if I remain angry at you and I don't forgive you, next time I see you, I'm going to punch you in the face, you know? And if I move out of that space and to want to forgive you through understanding why you did what you did and my part in it, taking responsibility for my part in the creation, it changes the dharma. It changes the effect.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in other words, another way to say that is forgiveness can redirect the path that your karma was headed towards playing out.
Right. Exactly.
That
Very
makes
well.
Go ahead,
The
Bob.
other thing I wanted to say
Oh.
in relation to what Bob was talking about in his experiences, what I found is pain or anger is always a secondary emotion, and there's always another emotion underneath it. Okay, that's like if someone hurts our feelings, we get angry. Anger is the secondary emotion. What's really going on is the pain that we're experiencing, because it's like if I'm in a relationship and she leaves me, I can be angry because I feel bad. But the reason I feel bad is because I needed her to validate me in the first place. And
Right.
if I take responsibility for that, what we have a tendency to do when we come into life is we're open and aware, and then we're taught to shut down. I mean,
Yeah.
don't read me. Our parents don't want us looking beyond their facade. They treat us like we're little imbeciles. We don't know anything, and they have to teach us everything. And they don't want us, as spirit, connecting with this body, mind, and emotion. So they do everything that they can to hamper that connection, not consciously,
Right.
but it's
Not consciously.
they've been programmed to do. And what we find is our mind, our body, and our emotions are not us. That's not who we are. Who we are is spirit. And we are using this just like we get in our car and we drive it. When we get in our car, are we our car? No.
Yeah.
No, we're not the car. This is not. And so our mind, we identify that with this being who we are, and we have a tendency to put mind on the throne, the brain on the throne, which usurps the place of spirit, which to me translates to this is the Antichrist. It's denying spirit. And that's the hardest thing for people to overcome in this life. I call it the dark night of the soul, is going back and forgiving themselves for allowing that denial to take place. Denial of who you are, a denial of pushing. It's like having a friend, and every time they come over, you get an ass whip.
Yeah.
You're going, hey, stay away. I don't want you here. Okay? So we have a tendency then to transfer our ability to validate ourselves or feel good about who we are to other people.
Hmm.
And when they die or go away, we re-experience that. And that's a place called grief. And I went through that a whole day. I woke up in the morning and cried my eyes out, just re-experiencing that grief. And after that experiencing and releasing and forgiving myself, understanding why I shut down, why I denied myself.
Well, you were
I had-
able
bliss-
to sit with your pain, Rick,
I
as
blissed out. I mean, I
Yeah.
went into a state of bliss. Instead of crying for grief, I was crying for joy. Amazing.
see, that's the transformation that can happen when someone is able and willing to sit with their pain, as I discussed with Brother Glenn, the hypnotist, a very dear friend of mine. He talked about how he uses the modality of his hypnotism to help a lot of people who are mentally unwell. And he said the most common, simple thread that he identified that runs through all of the different cases that he has experienced is that the people were unwilling or unable to sit with their pain. But what you just illustrated is that when you were able and willing to sit with your pain, yeah, part of you broke open and the tears flowed like a river. And then what followed that? Healing and release and absolute bliss is what was beyond that pain. And
So it was based on that forgiveness, understanding why.
right. And that's what we mean when we say that we've made a few
Emotion-
references to pain being transformational and necessary in some cases.
Emotions like over the top of memory, subconscious memory. We had to go through life as a child, and we did good enough. We had that day of our conscious life, we just shoot ourselves. So it becomes suppressed. And so you have a memory and you have the emotion that sits over the top of it. Most people, when they come in, they hit the emotion that says, you're no good. And they go, oh, I don't want to go there.
Right.
If you can sit with the emotion and be present with it, make it your friend, then the memories start rising to the surface. And then once you have that awareness, you can start releasing it.
And this kind of these points that you're sharing now, Rick, I would say kind of relate more directly to self-forgiveness. Because once you can see and sit with and be present to the overlying, the emotion is like the lid on the pot, and inside the pot is the wound, the issue. And if you can just sit and observe and feel it and let it be, let it present itself to you without judgment and without resistance, then comes understanding, and forgiveness is a bygone at that point, and I just think
forgive all the other people in your life that made you feel that way.
or at least enacted the situations that brought about that feeling, at least. The last point I want to cover in what you've just offered is really amazing to me. You talked about when the intellect, when the mind, or we could call it the ego intellect, usurps the throne of the soul. It is that usurpation. It's not the mind, but it's the usurpation of the place of the soul by the ego intellect, the mind, which is the Antichrist. And in other words, it's a complete distortion of the hierarchy of our being. And in that sense, it is Antichrist, Christ being the pure divine consciousness that we are. Christ consciousness and Buddha nature, really the same light. I think that that's a brilliant metaphor or analogy or description that is definitely worth remembering. And I want to ask Bob, can you chime in on what Rick has just offered? Because you've got an infinite wellspring of wisdom and
Well,
experience as well.
I think that, I think Rick's right. One of the things you hear is, oh, just let go of it. Oh, just let go of it. Well, I can let go of something physical. Boom, I let go of it. Letting go of emotional stuff is a whole different game. And I think Rick hit it. It's the, I think I'll go in a slightly different direction, maybe off on a little bit of a tangent. Oh, no, not me. And um, I think I think one of the problems of Western society is a philosophical underpinning that teaches us that we're bodies.
Mhm.
And so, and even we talked about this earlier, I have a soul. Well, have is to be in possession of.
Mhm.
Well, if you've ever had an out of body experience, you realize that you are not a body in possession of a soul. It's the other way around. If we had a philosophical foundation in our society that came from a more spiritual viewpoint, I think that the kind of things we're talking about, what Rick is talking about, is actually easier to attain that kind of forgiveness because we have something else we can do besides be all in our mind. You know, we can look at it from a different perspective. But when you think your whole world is what you see out of your eyes and how you interpret it here, well, then you're missing the heart connection.
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
missing the soul connection because you deny its existence. And by doing so, you set the stage for a lot of pain in your life or in one's life. And so I think that's where you're going, Rick.
Well, I was told the story about the dark night of the soul and the
Right.
crying in the morning, grief, and then breaking through that in the joy. Well, part of that breaking through was letting go of those decisions I'd made about myself
Mm.
when I was very young, and that grief and denying that part of myself, so I didn't get beat. Where was I going with that? Oh well.
You had absorbed some perfect pictures that had been playing out and affecting your creation of reality, your
Oh,
experience of reality.
I know where I was going. After I did that, for 6 months, I could not sit, laying on my back. I could not sit up straight in bed. I could not. The pain here was so intense in my chest area here, and all the bones were cracking, popping, and my whole. I used to be more like this, like, you don't beat me, massa.
Mm.
Now I'm more like this.
Mm.
I'm an idiot now.
There was a brokenness in you that you broke through and now you healed from it. And it's interesting too, how you refer to the way that the body, because everything is in sync, or at least everything is connected and affecting, soul, mind, emotions, body, everything affects everything. And when you were harboring those wounded pictures and effects and energy that was within you, your body was following suit and taking the stance of, I am defeated, I am overpowered, I'm broken. And then when those issues came through into healing and you were liberated from them, you stood back up into your true stance. The body reflected your true vibration, which is that, as I always say, you are a child of divinity. And then you were able to see, it's, for me, what I've noticed, especially in the past, like maybe 2 years especially, it's not about striving to work hard and struggle to become and to achieve and to overcome this. It's a matter of releasing, sitting with your pain, releasing your wounds and your perfect pictures and all the things that have ever affected you, with forgiveness and understanding until you are releasing everything that is not you or yours. And what remains is you, and you are a child of divinity. Whether you understand it or agree with it or not, you are. And when you release all that has sullied that or burdened or limited that, there you are, return to your, it's like polishing a gem that was coated with mud and dirt. It isn't that it's a lump of mud, it's been hit with mud. Polish it off. Oh, that hurts a little bit. Well, as Rumi says, if every rub irritates you, how will you be polished? So keep polishing, and there you will find you are the divine gem. You are, even when you can't see it, and even when you forget it, which we all constantly do. So it's good that we three men are here reminding everybody, because the fact is that everybody who's viewing our shared conversation right now actually already knows these things, but maybe they've gone into unconscious or they have been forgotten. And it's always good to bring them right back up into the light, into the consciousness, into the focus, polish them, and keep them prevalent, and keep them, you know, in the forefront of our consciousness and our awareness.
Well, you know, when I first left the center is a place where I learned to read auras, and they didn't teach us what to believe, how to believe.
Right.
They gave us tools, nothing but tools. Here's some tools that you can use to become aware of all your chakras, whether they're open and closed, how to move energy through our body, how to move healing energy for others. And I went to a gathering at a bookstore, and people were invited to have something to offer. So I said, well, I come and do reading, do aura reading. And the first reading that the lady came in that I did, she wanted to know about her health. So I said, okay. So I sat down and wow, blown away. I'd never done a health reading before, but she had all this black energy around her breast and around her ovaries. And I'm like, whoa, what's that? And so I tuned into it. She was raised with 7 brothers. She was the only girl in the family. She hated being female. And this is what I told her. And she was looked at me and went, ah. She'd had one mastectomy, had her ovaries removed, and had cancer in her other breast. And it's like just that issue of hating herself for being female when she compared herself to all her brothers created all that physical pain and disability.
The body followed suit. The body
follows the mind.
Yeah, the body reflects what is vibrating in the mind. Just like when you said you were previously kind of hunched over and concave, and now you're standing tall and firm. Quite tall, by the way, for a shorter guy like me. And you know, you talk about reading auras. I'll just say in passing that I know a guy who is so boring that his aura is beige, but that's beside the point.
Well, you know, it's like, you know, we all have lots of ideas about how we should be or what we're supposed to be like. And for babies, we don't have those ideas, you know, and then we start getting these things put in place, and pretty soon we build ourselves a cage. And our ideal, or I call them perfect pictures, because that's what they look like when you read auras. It's a perfect picture. Gets more and more and more and more confining. And so most people, as they walk through life, they're constantly beating themselves on some level for not living up to the perfect picture that wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah, we create a projection of idealness that we then buy into. We believe, well, I am supposed to be being this, but I'm actually being that. And so there's that contention and friction, and right there is where that struggle and striving, which is exhausting, comes in. I've dealt with it myself, as you both know, and I'm not over it. But it's okay because we're never done, and it's always, I'm a work in progress. I was thinking about I should print a T-shirt that says, "I'm a mess, deal with it." I'm just a mess, deal with it. We're never done, right, Bob?
Well, as I've said, there's only the journey.
Mm.
I suppose there's a destination and we'll know when we get there, but basically it's just a journey. And I don't know, we're supposed to be going from this level of existence to a higher level of existence and a higher level of existence after that. Well, it's just a journey. And I don't get too caught up in it, I just, here I am doing what I'm doing.
I always like the thing that says, well, it's a biblical quote. And I know some people are into the Bible, some people aren't, but you got to take things from wherever you get them. And I always like this one: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But I add a little piece on the end of it, because they are you. There's
Yeah,
only one of us here.
yeah.
We're all.
I love that quote from you: "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because they are you." It reminds me of the Zen monk that went to his master and said, "Master, how do I handle all these people that are insulting me and offending me and upsetting me? And how am I supposed to deal with others?" And the Zen master said, "There are no others." And in that sense, that we are all connected. I mean, maybe you don't buy into the "we are all one" thing, but you have to buy into the "we are all interconnected." So in that sense, yeah, somebody else as a divine mirror is reflecting you. They're just, you are your muse, in that sense that everyone is reflecting each other. And so I think that's some great and practical wisdom. You also reminded me, Rick, so that's known as the golden rule, and that comes not only from Christianity, that comes from ancient Egyptian scriptures, and just about every religion that can be named has its own way of saying that exact same principle. And there's another one, I cannot remember the name of the gentleman that came up with it, but it's called the platinum rule: treat others as they would have you treat them, which is food for thought as well. Not as you would have them treat you, but as they would have you treat them. And that fits into your statement earlier where you said you start off treating everybody, or did you say that in the recording or before the recording? You start off treating everybody as if they are the Christ or the Buddha, until they demonstrate that they wish to be treated otherwise.
Exactly. That was in the first part.
Yeah. And as Bob chimed in, we teach people how to treat us. There's a huge amount of responsibility and potentiality right there.
We teach people how to treat us by the behavior we accept in our lives. If we accept that behavior, then we make it okay.
There it is. It's that simple.
It's that simple.
You teach people how to treat you by demonstrating your boundaries.
Right. It's a shame. It seems like so much in our society has twisted that golden rule to do unto others before they do it to you. Well, that's kind of sick. How do you expect to function? We go back to that thing I talked about, the 5 values. Those have to be internal. That has to be how you're operating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I like that where we were talking about forgiveness and anger and all that. The quote that's attributed to Buddha, like a lot of them, whether he said it or not, I don't know, but they said to hold anger toward another is like drinking poison and expect the other person to die. Well,
yeah, it was either the Buddha or Morgan Freeman or Mickey Rooney or Abe Lincoln who said that. according to
Actually, I think it was the gal at the donut shop, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, those are the most frequently misattributed quoters, but it doesn't really matter in the end who said it.
No.
Truth resonates as true when you hear it. And Rick, you wanted to chime in on what Bob said?
Uh, it was spontaneous, so I don't
It's,
it
there
was,
is only the now.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to wrap up with I'll offer a quote that came to me from somewhere that I think should be on a plaque somewhere because of how much it's meant to me, which is forgive everyone relentlessly. Begin with yourself. That's what I would offer as a
good
starting
to me.
point. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I will
You
say,
know-
easier said than done.
Do it anyway. It's why you're here.
just finishing up with the thing we talked about, being souls and not, being souls with a body. And what is a soul? It's energy with a consciousness. And so ultimately, everything is energy. Well, what energy do you want to hold? I mean, love is way more fun than anger. So what energy do you want to operate your life out of? And what energy do you want to draw to you? And holding on to anger and being cranky all the time is unhealthy.
I would frame that, Bob, by saying that on a micro scale of yourself, tend your own garden. Make all you can do, and all you're actually asked to do, or hoped you could do, is to tend your own garden, manage your own energy. What frequency do you want to operate on, and what frequency, therefore, do you want to resonate out into the universe? Because I can't remember the name of the actual graph, but there's very, very low frequencies like guilt, shame, anger, hatred, jealousy, things like that. And then there's very, very high vibrations of love, forgiveness, bliss, etc. And you can choose to the best of your ability, with according to what you're able to release that is holding you down. You can choose to elevate your frequency, and the higher your frequency rises, the exponentially higher amount of others around you are being bathed in that energy, literally, so that one light bulb is lighting the universe. Now, how brightly do you want it to shine? And we each are that one light bulb. We're only responsible for ourselves, but the amount of people and the degree to which we can affect those around us in the world is unbelievable. And at a time now where anybody that's half aware of what all is going on in the world, this is crucial at this point. Raise your vibration. Release all that limits and hinders you, all that is not you, through forgiveness, the transmuting of your karma, and elevating your frequency carries and lifts the entire world collectively.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things I've done along that line is gone back to something I heard, I don't know, 100 years ago. What you impress, you express. So if you want to have a higher vibration, don't get involved in lower vibration activities, films, or books. I mean,
You are what you eat. Whatever
we
you
go.
consume becomes part of your consciousness,
Yeah,
and thus is resonated out. I like that. What you impress, you express. So whatever you allow to take hold within you, you will be resonating out to others.
right.
Yep.
A lot of times, like take eating, for example. I learned this the hard way. I went out to Sweet Tibby Dunbar's one time to have a really good steak. Now, some people would say that, you shouldn't be eating steak. But the waitress brought my steak, took 2 bites out of it, and I started like, God, I'm sick. So I sat there and I go, what's going on here? It's like, oh, the waitress was a vegan.
Ah,
And she slammed the food with her energy. And so I cleared it. And that's I learned that's where we learn to pray, where the idea of praying over your food is like cleansing it, like having an angry cook. You don't want to eat that food
No,
unless you cleanse that anger. And also, we have so much judgment about this is good and that's bad, and this is good and that's bad. How does that affect it if we do eat it? Oh, I know chocolate's bad for me. I love it. Hey, you
Mm.
just poisoned yourself.
You impressed that negative message onto the food that you ingested into
Right.
you, and you've set it on that course within your metabolism, in other words.
that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons that
Yeah,
when
you bless everything that you take into your body.
it's one of the reasons when we go out to eat, we Reiki the food before we eat it.
At the very least, place a blessing that is meaningful to you on everything that you eat before you eat it. One of the things that I'll do before I eat food is I put my hands over it and I say, you are the supreme divine essence. It can be that simple. Or you can Reiki it, or you can say, say again, Rick.
I said it's all energy. You qualify it and quantify it.
Yeah.
Right.
And somebody could say, well, how are you, how can you say that is effective? How can you say that's so? Because we said it is so. It's that simple. We imbued that quality of energy de facto into the food that we're eating. So yes, to those who are watching, bless everything you eat and drink. Bless it in the way that is meaningful to you. Because care, as Greg Braden would illustrate, care is the key to manifesting. So do what resonates with care. You really care it, you about it, you really plug into it, you really buy it. Because if you don't, it's weak or compromised and ineffective. Your assent and your certitude, your certainty about it is very critical. And
One of the,
go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that I do, especially when eating meat, is I give thanks to the cow or the chicken or the fish or whatever it was. Thank you. You know, your life has been sacrificed so that I can eat, so that I can move forward. And that's part of my blessing is the gratitude that animal for giving up its life. And I do admit that sometimes it creeps me out to think that something had to die for me to eat. But my dad told me, he says, hey, look out at nature. Everything dies so something else can eat. And even if you look at plants and vegan and all that, even plants have a consciousness. You know, it's just a matter of degree. You got to really investigate it and see what that is. Look at the secret life of plants if you have a doubt.
Where I'm at with that issue, Bud, is that all is a spark of the divine. All is an individuated sovereign emanation of the divinity. And
Absolutely.
what we're observing is the theater of forms changing. And so I'm starting to reach a point where I understand it as different forms are absorbed into other forms, larger ones, in the process of forms merging into back towards the one, the multitude of forms being consumed by larger forms, which are consumed by larger forms. And that seems to be the stream that forms follow. It's not that necessarily clean and cut and dried, I know, but that's the general overview of where I'm at on that point.
Well, kind of what they say, that energy can't be created or destroyed, it just changes form. So if we're looking at it from that view, then there it is.
And you reminded me what another brother of mine, Matt Sweetwood, we did an episode on the undermining of the sacred masculine early on in the channel. And Matt brought up a wonderful point that I'll never forget. He said, there is no new pain. It's all recycled. It's all passed from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you impress, you express.
Well, and along that line, you know, we talk about what you put into your mind. Think of it from the viewpoint of freeing your mind. Instead of having to let go of a bunch of stuff, just don't put it in. Yeah, It's life can be confusing enough.
Yeah.
So
What am I allowing into my own universe? What am I allowing in? Always a good question. One of the 7 sacred questions. What am I allowing in? So, Rick, any closing point that you'd like to offer on forgiveness as we wrap up this wonderful conversation that I've enjoyed with you brothers a lot? Thank you.
Well, I think I'd like to close with the thought that over the years of teaching, having many students, the thing that seemed to be the hardest for them to overcome and forgive themselves for was the denial of self.
mm,
And it's kind of like those emotions. You know, when you go and you hit the emotion and boom, you don't want to deal with it. Okay. So what happens to a lot of people is they'll come in and hit that, and they go deep within and go through it. They're actually afraid of what they will find. They will actually, because they have a lot of subconscious beliefs that I'm not good enough, I'm not spirit, I'm not this. I mean, look at a lot of the religions. They teach, well, basically we're sinners, you know, and subconsciously we believe that, and we're afraid, they're afraid that if we really dig in and go deep within, that's what we're going to find, that we really are not good enough, rather than a life-giving spirit.
Well, there's no shortage of opportunities to quote Marianne Williamson. I'll just paraphrase where she says, you know, the greatest fear within us is not our darkness, but our power, and
right.
how powerful we actually really are. And that's one of the best quotes. Marianne, if you ever watch this, forget politics. It's not your bag, baby. You are a spiritual genius. That's where you should remain in your element. We are somewhat let's say resistant anyway to how powerful in fact we are, because we take this, we kind of stand back with this stance of diffidence. Oh well, who am I to say, you know, who am I to say that I have that power or access to that power? Whereas, as Marianne says, in fact, who are you not to?
Right.
So we are all powerful. We are all directly of the divinity that we have arisen from. As I've said before, we are, each of us, a sovereign, individuated emanation of the divinity from which we have arisen. And forgiveness transmutes our karma. We are responsible for all of the experiences and incidents and events and people that we draw to us according to matching the frequency that we vibrate at. And that is not our demise, that is our power. So using it consciously, forgive everyone relentlessly. Begin with yourself. Liberate yourself into the bliss of who you actually have always already been. Brother Rick, Brother Bob, I love you both dearly. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation together today, and I thank you. And I thank also our viewers very much. Remember to be the divinity that you are.
Um,
My friend.